Mark it down. Then finally, a loss of opportunity for much needed transparency. You know, everybody needs to be known. Every guy in this room needs to be known and understood. Because let me tell you, when you're talking to another man and you feel like he understands and knows you, you know what you're going to feel? Loved. Loved. And every man needs to feel loved by other men. It's in isolation that we seek to attract friends that we can share our life with. And you know, after a while, you know what starts going on in our head? Little voices begin to speak, and these little voices say this: nobody knows me. Nobody cares about me. Nobody understands me. Nobody gives a rip about me. I'm all alone in this world. So we throw this pity party. And after a while, we suffer from what I call the 3 Ds: discouragement, depression, and then danger. That's what the loss of transparency brings. So these significant downsides: a warped perspective on life, can't see the forest for the trees; loose living, I become a law unto myself; a loss of motivation for the noble things of life, I live for less rather than the best; and then finally, a loss of opportunity for much needed transparency. If I stay alone long enough, it becomes me against the world, and I become angry. Listen to what the Scripture says about this, because it speaks of the importance of being connected. Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Proverbs 18:24 says, there's a friend out there who sticks closer than a brother. A friend can do something a brother never could. Ecclesiastes 4:9 and 10, Solomon says, 2 are better than one, for if either of them fall, the one will lift up his companion. But woe to him if there's not another. Woe to him if there's not another to lift him up. Proverbs 17:17 says, a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. One of the greatest shames in my life is when one of my close friends called me as he was going through a divorce. He lived a long way away. He was weeping over into the phone. I comforted him as best I could and hung up the phone, but I didn't go. And I'll always regret it. Because a brother is born for adversity. Hebrews 10:24 says, let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, because real friends call you up, not down. 1 Samuel 20:17 just introduces us to this wonderful friendship story about Jonathan and David. It says there that Jonathan loved David as his own life. That's how close they were. In fact, in another verse it says the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David. Now that's a bond. And happy is the man who, as I said, just has one of those kind of deep connections. Because listen, guys, life is a team sport. Never forget that. It's one of the great principles of life. It's a team sport. So what can you do? Let me give you 5 things you can do. First, learn the 3 keys to friendship. Here they are. Loyalty. One of the things about friendship that makes friends go deep and last is an unwavering loyalty to one another. That means you're there for the other person. In the good times, you enjoy one another. In the tough times, you support one another. In the terrible times, you hold one another. But you're there. I'll never forget when my mom died. I drove down to Ruston, 3.5 hours away. And since she was the youngest of 10 children, most of the relatives had died. So my brother and I decided we'd do the funeral for our mother. We were the speakers. And I went into that Baptist church and I walked up to the podium. There were just a few of our old friends left. But as I walked up to that podium, a door opened in the back of the sanctuary and my friends came. My friends. And it meant everything because they were there. Loyalty. Secondly, faithfulness to our values. Now I say that because every friendship is built on common values, some common values, spoken or unspoken. I don't know if you've ever thought about that, but I think that's at the very core of friendships, is common values. And if you betray those common values, you fracture the friendship. I remember when I was in college, I had a lot of drinking friends, okay? And I remember I told them one day, we were driving along in the car and everybody was passing out the beer, and I'd just become a Christian and I decided I was going to quit drinking. And so everybody was passing around. They gave me a bottle. I said, you know, I tried to pass it off where I didn't look strange. He said, no, I don't want that. Oh, yeah, you do. Come on, man. We're going out. It's Friday night. I went, no, I don't want to. And finally, they kept pressing me. Come on, what's wrong? I said, I don't want to drink anymore. Man, the car pulled over and they let me out. I just betrayed the sacred oath, the values of the organization, and I was out. Now, real friendships are based on something a lot deeper than that. But you guys get the point, don't you? Is that when you join together with another guy for life, there's some common values there that you hold on to and support and encourage. Whether you've fully identified them or not, if you think of a good friend, start thinking about what are our values that draw us together. That's what we adhere around. Then finally, encouragement, because that's what friendship's all about, encouraging one another. And you can write this down. If you're going to have any friends, you've got to follow these three principles of loyalty and faithfulness to some common values and encouragement. Secondly, reach out to other men. Now, let me tell you, that takes courage as an adult. If some of your youthful friendships have faded away or moved away and you find yourself kind of lonely and say, I want some friends, you're going to have to step up. You're going to have to reach out to some other guys, and that takes courage, because sometimes there might be somebody you want to develop a friendship with and they don't want to develop a friendship with you, and it feels like you've been rejected. But there are ways to do that, to be proactive in that. If there's another guy that you say, you know, I think I'd like to be a friend of that guy, invite him out to lunch. Invite him to go to some activity. And if you guys hit it off, you be the proactive one, though. Don't sit back and throw a pity party. Start reaching out to guys. There may be some that, you know, like trying to fish, you just don't catch them, but maybe there's a guy that you begin to connect with. And he begins to call you. And one day, maybe you need to even be courageous enough to look over across the table and say, you know, Wayne, I really enjoy our friendship. And that's kind of like, want to sign a contract? And he reaches back and says, you know, I really enjoy our friendship too. Now we're going somewhere. And then that loyalty and that faithfulness and that encouragement kick in. You get a lifelong friend. And happy is the man who has even one of them. Reach out to other men. Thirdly, challenge men that you like. Okay, that you like. You just have a natural chemistry with. To meet regularly with you to get better. Just to get better. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. But here's what Proverbs 13:20 says. He who walks with the wise grows wise. But the companion of fools suffers harm. If I were a young man in this room, you know what I'd do? I'd look around and start saying, who are the guys who are doing it well? And I'd want to get with them. Now, how do you get with them? Maybe they're not going to be your best friend. But you know, there are some ways to get with guys to get better. Let me just give you some ways you can do that. First, you can say, hey, let's do a book club together. Read some good book and just get together early in the morning, have coffee, talk about the great thoughts that are there. Wise guys like that. They like new thoughts, stimulating thoughts, good ideas, creative ideas, challenging ideas. So do that. Or get into a Bible study that'll stretch not just your mind, but your spirit. And if that's a foreign thing for you, let it be an adventure, a field trip. Get with some other guys and see what that great book is all about. Or maybe form a prayer team together and stretch your connection with God together. Man, that's intimate, but that forms and forges friendships. Or form what I call an E-team, just an encouragement team. You see guys around town do that all the time. They have their lunch bunch or breakfast bunch, and they're not there for anything other than just to talk about life. They're just, I call them philosophers. You know, I see some guys down at Burger King that have been meeting for 3 years. And they're there, and they're just over there talking about, you know, their families and their kids and stuff, but they encourage one another. They're just there to be an E-team for one another. Or maybe you get together with the guys in your men's fraternity and you say, when it's over, you say, let's keep meeting. There are guys who are doing that even now from years ago. Or maybe there's a mentoring relationship you can enter into, and you come along a young guy and say, hey, let's start getting together. I'd like to talk to you about life. And it doesn't mean that you've done it well. You may have not done it well at all, but that's what he needs to hear. How you didn't do it well, so he won't make your mistakes. But be encouraged by it. But here's what happens. When men just start getting groups together just to get better, what happens in the midst of those groups is in the midst of that kind of what I call social party, they'll notice certain guys in there that they particularly like and who particularly like them. And out of that, lifelong friendships get formed. So challenge a group of guys to get together. A lot of men are just sitting there in waiting. That's what I think happens to a lot of men. It's kind of like, you know, when you used to go to a dance in junior high, the girls would sit on one side and the guys are on the other side, and they're just waiting for each other. That's the way I think male friendships are. They're guys on both sides just waiting for each other. And somebody needs to get up and go to the other side and tap somebody and say, hey, let's dance. And out of that, after a while, a relationship is formed. So that's what you need to do. Fourthly, get real with another guy and share your heart, because real friendships go beyond the small talk about sports and weather and politics. It gives way to what I call soul talk. Here's how you know you're in soul talk. It's when you start talking about your needs and your dreams and your doubts and your failures and your struggles and your temptations and your spiritual insights. When you get down at that level, we're talking substance there. And every man wants to talk there. You know, a lot of you guys, one of the things I love about being in certain groups where you just give them the permission to doubt. It's just people just walking around with all kinds of questions about life. They just want to talk to somebody, but they're afraid. It's a great moment to have a place where you can talk about anything and everything and feel safe. You can unload your soul with another man, which is the richest kind of relationship. Now, everybody look up here for just a moment. That's what we're just beginning to scratch the surface right here, aren't we? That's why I give you questions and we go to small groups. And you talk about something substantive like your relationship with your mom or your dad or what you felt growing up. Feels good, doesn't it? Just a little bit of that just feels good because it's something that's been in there that needed to get out. And we're learning just a little of that as a mass group as we break up into small groups. And it feels good. Imagine things like that going on for a lifetime, but not just hard stuff, good stuff. To be encouraged and empowered and enriched and blessed because we've learned that life is a team sport. That's what I'm talking about. Get real and share your heart. And then finally, enjoy life together. Because nothing draws men closer together than activity. That's how guys bond a lot of times. They forge together in the midst of shared experiences. You ever listen to a group of old men talk in a park or around a breakfast table? And what they share? What do old men remember? They remember laboring side by side together when they were really stretched out. The hard stuff. You know, Bill Wellens and Bill Parkinson and I, for the rest of our lives, we'll tell stories about how we started this church. And how we sat around a breakfast table one morning about 15 years ago, kind of dividing up what was the offering. It was about $16 each. And weeping about, are we going to make it? But we'll tell rich stories about that. our whole lives. Mike Robinson and I will tell stories about going to Colombia, South America, and out there building that evening, that school for the Guajira Indians, and as we were coming back in, being attacked by Indian bandits with machetes. Bill Smith and I will talk about starting men's fraternity together when it was just a small group of guys. Now hearing about it being taught in Beijing, China, and Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and Sarasota, Florida, and Prague. Side by side. Soldiers. See, that's what you talk about as friends. Old men talk about war stories. My college roommates, Mike Boschetti and John Reese, and I will always talk about 1969, the 100th year of college football, and playing on a team that got to play for the national championship. We'll always remember that. Remember that week where they had to take us and go hide us in Bentonville because there was so much pressure. I remember the helicopter with the President of the United States landing to come to watch us play. And Billy Graham giving the invocation before the game started. My high school friends and I, Wayne Smith, Skip Brown, Gary Hurd, will always remember those crazy things we did because old men remember crazy things. I remember the opening of that new store where they put that blimp up in Ruston to announce the grand opening, and we laid down in the back of an old station wagon with a .22 and shot it down. I remember Skip and I taking Wayne Smith for the first time out skiing in Skip's dad's new ski boat. And we were out there, and we finally got Wayne up, and just like high school guys do, we started that ski boat around in circles, got Wayne way out there. Wayne was just screaming. We got so excited that Skip and I both forgot who was driving the boat. Next thing we knew, the boat was next to the superhighway there. And the police were pulling over saying, "How come this boat is in the highway?" Those are what I call crazy things that we used to do. I remember Wayne Smith, who's now a judge in North Louisiana, and I skinny dipping in the Holiday Inn pool. And I'll never forget Wayne, butt naked, standing there with a police German Shepherd on one side and a policeman on the other side going, "Please don't tell my daddy, please don't tell my daddy." That's what old men remember. Crazy things, war stories, laboring side by side, shared experiences. We few, we happy few. We band of brothers. Most of you know that World War I was a hellacious war. It was trench warfare where masses of young men were told to get up out of those trenches and run across what is known as a no man's land and be slaughtered because we didn't know what a machine gun could do in that war. There were two friends, Jim and Bill, who were in that war. They forged a friendship in those trenches in that terrible war, and during that time, they shared their hopes and dreams with one another and thoughts about if they just made it, what they would do if they ever got back home, and then pledged their lives to one another. On one particular foray over the top, when Bill got back, Jim wasn't there. Jim had been mortally wounded. He got back in the trench and he realized his friend wasn't there, and he started out of the trench back into that hellacious fire. And an officer grabbed him and said, "You can't go back out there. Your friend is finished." And when the officer turned to walk away, Bill went anyway to get Jim. And then in a few minutes, he scrambled back into the trench alone. And he said, "My friend is dead." And the officer grabbed him and chewed him out and said, "That's the stupidest thing you could have done." He said, "No, it wasn't. Jim was still alive when I got there." And the officer said, "What did he say?" And he said, "He told me, Bill, I knew you'd come." Every man needs to understand that life is a team sport. We'll see you next week.